How are we? Hello everyone. Welcome back to another Deadline stream. It is Game Week 28. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you all very much for joining. Nice to see so many of you in the chat already. Hello to you all. We will do the usual bits. We will say hello to you. I've got transfers to make. We'll spend the time answering your questions. Deadline is just under 2 hours. Deadline is just under 2 hours away. I hope you are doing well. Nice to see so many of you in a Friday evening deadline for us this week. Before we get into all of the questions, let's say hello to some of you in the chat. Who have we got in here? We've got Ian, we've got Ewan, we've got Leonardo, we've got Jordan, we've got Fiona, we've got James, we have got Matt. Hello to Ozspike. Hello to Adrian. Hello to Matt. Hello to all the members and moderators in this afternoon, this evening. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you all especially for all your support on the channel. Hello to AB5. Hello to Jimbo. Hello to Lath. Hello to Akilk. Hello to Harry. Hello to I Am Green. Scaro, Boston Mike, Johnny, Ewan, Devon, Shanti, D Footprint, Namdemura, No Namanu. Sorry, I can't. A couple of names. I was like, how am I going to pronounce them? I already get shouted out for pronouncing Ayer enough times this week. Man, the amount of comments I've had about the pronunciation of Ayer being wrong. I apologize if I have been getting it wrong and it's been grinding your gears. Hello to Fraser. Hello to FPL NI. Great Ands. David 1337. Usama. Owen. Hermano. BallerX. Max. And T-Boy. Hello to you all and everyone else. I hope you are doing well. I have revolutionized something this afternoon, this evening. I have changed browser for the first time probably in my life. I am an Apple user, so as a default, I am a Safari user. And I have learnt over the past day or two from people telling me that Safari has its downfalls, effectively. It's not been working very well for me for the past couple of days. For anyone who has seen my tweets, basically I had a big issue with uploading my video yesterday. And it effectively came down to it being a Safari issue, effectively. So I moved to Chrome and my life is changed. The first thing that is going to be incredible on stream is, like when I am doing transfers and stuff and like my screen goes a bit weird and like it starts flickering when I go on the transfer page. Yeah. None of that anymore. It just works absolutely fine, however the screen is. It's just great. So we're all upgrading. Anyway, let's get to Game Week 28. The plan for me, as it has been since probably about Wednesday, is going to be to do Dorgu to Virgil van Dijk and Declan Rice down to Wilson over Dango. I like Dango. I think Dango is a great pick and I would love to be in a position where I was able to buy both of them, but unfortunately I don't have that luxury. So yes, that is the plan, that I will go Wilson over Dango. Is Wirtz injured? Yes, it looks like Wirtz is going to be out of Game Week 28. Whether he's back or not for Game Week 29 is something different. He might be back midweek. It sounds 50-50 about whether he'll be back for the Wolves game or not. But yes, he's going to be out of the game this weekend. Am I put off? This is a really big question and something we'll talk about in just a moment. Am I put off buying City players like O'Reilly now after the Champions League draw? we will talk about that in just a moment. I have 3 Arsenal defenders. Should I take one out for Van Dijk? Yes, a Saliba or a Timber to Van Dijk. If you've got triple Arsenal, I would probably do. Would I bench boost with Dubravka, Konza, Vandenberg, and Watkins, or wait until the double? Should I bench boost with Dubravka, Konza, Vandenberg, and Watkins, or would I wait until the doubles? If you've already played your wildcard, you can consider playing your bench boost if you've already wildcarded. If you've still got the wildcard in hand, I probably would be looking to save the bench boost for later down the line and after your wildcard. It doesn't feel perfect enough that if money's no issue, would I go Sharda or Dango? I still think I would go Dango. Sharda has had 1 double-digit return so far this season, which was his hat-trick against Bournemouth earlier on in the season. Dango Ouattara has had 4 double-digit returns. Dango Ouattara, to me, just feels like the more explosive player that you could potentially have a look at. So that's probably where I would go. Thank you very much, Aziz. Another deadline, another stream. Keep up the great content. Thank you very much. Would I start Ryan or Wilson? I'd go Wilson over Ryan. If I had both of them, I'd probably be looking to start both. It's a crazy benching decision if you've got both of them in your team, but I would be looking to start probably Wilson over Ryan, but it's pretty close, to be honest. Rice to Mbeumo versus Timber to Van Dijk. This is quite a big question this week. I actually don't think the defender transfer has that much upside, despite what Virgil van Dijk has done recently. I think I'd be more inclined to get rid of Rice because I think some of those other midfielders are very good picks at the moment. Is Szoboszlai a good shout with Wirtz out, particularly because Gomez and Frimpong are back? That is the biggest upside for Szoboszlai, because Szoboszlai now will likely play in midfield. But actually, he's probably likely to play number 10 now that Wirtz is out. So a couple of things from the Liverpool press conference that I think really boosted going and picking up Szoboszlai this week. He's actually in the wildcard draft that I built for the FPL show this morning, partly because of that. Would I hold or sell Wirtz? So I've seen a few teams from my members this afternoon about people with Florian Wirtz, and it depends a couple of situations. If you've got a strong 7 or 8 attackers, or you can get to a position where you're just playing Rice and you can bench Wirtz, that is probably what I would look to do, because I think from game week 29 onwards, if Wirtz is back, he's still a good pick. But if you're in a position where you've got like a Guiu or you've got a forward or a midfielder who doesn't really play, that's the situation that you probably need to sell Wirtz. But if you've got the ability, for example, if you could do Enzo, like I've seen people being able to do Enzo and Potts out as an example to buy Wilson and Tavernier in order to bench Wirtz, or do a Rice to Wilson to upgrade Guiu to someone else in order to bench Wirtz. That's probably my favourite scenario if you've got Wirtz, just benching him. But I think there is a big doubt about whether he'll be back or not for the Wolves game midweek. Start 2, Timber, Munoz, Gabriel, or Jimenez of Bournemouth. Gabriel definitely starts, and I probably would play Jimenez. If that was Hill or Senesi, I probably would play them. And I know he's not as good for DEFCON, but he has some attacking threat, so I probably would go with Jimenez. Timber and Wirtz out for Van Dijk and Mbeumo. Yes, like if you need to sell Wirtz, that's fine. Timber to Van Dijk is also a fine transfer. I don't think there's that much upside in it, though. Any thoughts on whether Tavernier starts? I think Tavernier will start. I think the question just comes with Tavernier about whether he can start two games in the space of 3 days, having come back from injury. That's, I think, the big question about whether he can start those 2 games in quick succession. Do I think I should sell Rice to get Virgil van Dijk, and who should replace Rice? Wilson, Dango Ouattara, the top 2 mids. I think Wilson is slightly safer long term, but I think Dango Ouattara is probably the more explosive option. He's slightly more risky for minutes, but I would say Dango is expected to start all of the next 4. Gakpo versus Szoboszlai, I would definitely go Szoboszlai. Would I do Dorgu to Konate, Timber to O'Reilly, Wilson and Rice stay? I'm not sure I would do that, because I'd want Van Dijk over Konate. So I'd rather sell Rice, the DJ, down in order to afford to go with Van Dijk over Konate, I think. Start Anderson or start Timber? I'd start Timber if you've got him. Timber over Anderson. Yeah. I think people are underestimating. I think people are over-exaggerating how much Arsenal have fallen off over the past couple of weeks. Their data is still good. The fixtures are still fine. They're playing at home this week. Then it's Brighton away. And then it's Everton at home. Like, the next three are still good fixtures. I think people are panicking a little bit too much on Arsenal players in general, and particularly their defence. I know that, like, over the last couple of weeks, it's been a big swing on someone like Van Dijk versus Timber, but I just don't see that happening again this week. I wouldn't go for Adley. People have mentioned Adley as a cheap midfielder. I think he's one of the most likely ones to come out, with Brooks and Tavernier probably expected to go back into the Bournemouth lineup this weekend. One transfer left, Enzo to Dango. Yeah, it's a transfer I like. Wilson is probably my recommended. He's the one I think I'm going to buy. But if you have the luxury of buying one this week and one potentially next week, then yeah, Dango this week and Wilson next week is a better way around to do it than the other way around. But if I had to pick one for the next 4 weeks, it's probably going to be Wilson for me. So that's the planned couple of transfers that I've got. Szoboszlai or Semenyo. If I could only buy one, again, I'd go Szoboszlai. So let's go back to that earlier question around the Champions League draw and Manchester City in particular. So Manchester City got drawn once again against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Now, the thing with it is not only that it's a difficult draw against Real Madrid, it's the fact that they got the Wednesday-Tuesday turnaround. So they play Wednesday evening against Real Madrid. They play Saturday evening against West Ham, and then they play Tuesday evening against Real Madrid again. Right? So they play Wednesday, having played in game week 29 on the weekend before that. They then play Wednesday, then they play Saturday, and then they play Tuesday. That is a very quick turnaround before then playing in a Carabao Cup final the weekend after that second Real Madrid game. So we are expecting that there could be some rotation. Now, it doesn't just look at Manchester City. Arsenal and Chelsea also have the same turnaround for the Champions League games in and around game week 30. It is enough to put me off buying Semenyo, and it's enough to put me off buying O'Reilly, just because with all the fixtures that they've got, all it takes is reduced minutes in one of the three games and for the blank in game week 31 to happen, and suddenly your player is playing 150 minutes less than anyone else across the next 4 weeks, which then isn't really worth the gamble. Now, they could start the next three, then Manchester City could lose to Newcastle in the Cup, and then they don't even blank in 31, and then this isn't really worth the risk. But I think that's a bridge that I'll cross in game week 30. If we get there and they're going to play in 31, then that's something else to think about. Semenyo doesn't play Champions League. That's because he wasn't available for selection in the group stage of the Champions League. He has since been registered for the knockout stages of the Champions League. So he can play against Real Madrid. So yes, he didn't play earlier on, but you enter a new squad for the knockout stages of the tournament. You have Wilson. Who should I get for Enzo? 7.5 in the bank. I still would go for Danguatara and leave the money for something else, probably Hassan. You've got 3 free transfers. Would I do Enzo to Dango and Rice to Wilson? Yeah, again, that money could be useful to you. I think unless you've got money to go up to someone like a Brian and Burmo, I think Dango and Wilson are probably the top 2 midfielders that I would be looking to buy this week. Do I sell Raya to Alisson? I don't think so. I don't think Alisson's particularly worth it. Dorgu is only in my starting 11. I know people will say that the Dorgu auto sub is annoying. I just saw someone mention it in the chat and it's pointless. That is both true, but he's in my starting 11 because I plan on selling him to Virgil van Dijk with one of my 2 transfers this week. Anthony Robinson for Maguire for a -4. Probably not for a hit, no. Do I think Wirtz will start? No, I don't. Not after the press conference today. I thought he would, based off what we heard at the end of Game Week 27, but based off what I heard now, I don't think so. Would I start Anderson over Timber if you're already playing Gabriel and Raya? Probably. I'm not sure I'd want a triple up on the Arsenal defence this week. Szoboszlai or Sharda? Szoboszlai. I just don't think Sharda's really worth the money. If you look at his returns so far this season, his data's been good, but the returns just haven't really been there to show for it. I'm just not sure I'd be paying that price. I don't see any reason to buy Sharda over Dango, over Wilson at a cheaper price. So if I had to pick, I'd go Szoboszlai out of the two, I think. -4 for Rice or Enzo to Wilson. Probably not. If you can just bench Enzo and play Rice, that's probably what I'd do. Unless you're playing both, then maybe Enzo to Wilson, but I don't think I'd do it for a hit. Start Xhaka or Anderson? Probably Anderson. Probably Anderson. Start Rice, João Pedro or Cash? Start Rice, João Pedro or Cash? Probably Rice. Rice's floor seems the highest out of them, and I expect Arsenal to probably win that game. Start Senesi or Anderson? Probably Anderson. Anderson of Forest, that is. Dorgu's in my team because I plan on selling him to Virgil van Dijk. I'm not massively feeling the Bruno captaincy, if I'm honest. I've not been that impressed with him over the past couple. I don't think he's massively passed the eye test. What are my general thoughts on Salah? He's looked way off it. He doesn't look like Liverpool's top 5 attackers at the moment. I'd rather buy Ekitike. I'd rather buy Szoboszlai. If Wirtz was available, I'd rather buy Wirtz. I'd probably rather buy Gakpo than Salah at the moment if I had to rank Liverpool attackers. So I wouldn't be going for Salah. And it also really messes up your structure. Is Bowen to Thiago worth a -4? Love the channel. I don't think it's worth a -4. I don't think it is, no. I know you'll look at it and you'll want Thiago and you'll probably want him next week. And just getting ahead of that transfer might be fine, but yeah. Yeah. 4 free transfers going to do either Chalobah, Munoz to Van Dijk, Enzo to Dango, and Rice to Szoboszlai. You own Wilson already. I could find a way to stretch to Ekitike. That's probably what I would wonder. Ekitike feels a much better buy than Szoboszlai. Instead of doing Rice to Szoboszlai, can you do Rice to a much cheaper mid, even down to someone like an Anderson or a Dewsbury Hall in order to fund Ekitike? I don't know who your 3 forwards are, Clover, but that's probably what I'd consider looking at that question. Start Anderson of Fulham or Mane. I'd play Anderson over Mane. Is Van Dijk essential? Is he worth a -4 if you've already got a good team? No. If you've got a defence that's like Gabriel, Timber, Hill, that I see a lot of people and they're wondering, or they've got something like that, or it's Anderson and they're considering a hit for Van Dijk. I wouldn't take a hit for Van Dijk unless you're starting someone like Richards or Tarkowski this week. In which case, then maybe, but yeah, I would reluctantly take a hit for a defender, so probably not. Start Anderson of Fulham or Munoz. Probably Anderson of Fulham. I just don't see Palace keeping a clean sheet. So at the end of the day, you're relying on Munoz getting an attack in return, which he is absolutely capable of doing. We know he can. But if the clean sheet doesn't even feel there at all, it's then quite a lot to be banking on. Szoboszlai or Sharda? Szoboszlai probably. Again, because I just don't... Not that I don't think Sharda's that close to Szoboszlai. I just don't think Sharda's worth it over Wilson and Dango. At all, really. I just don't see the need to pay the money for Sharda. He just feels too expensive when you've got so many good, cheap midfielders. And I think Szoboszlai in midfield now, potentially even number 10. Yeah. Yeah, I like Szoboszlai more than I like Sharda at that price. Why have I held on to Dorgu for this long? Sorry, I was zoning out, as I do. Why have I held on to Dorgu for this long? Just I've never had a reason to sell him. Now I should have sold him at some point because the defenders I could have bought in his place have outscored the defenders that I've played over the past couple of weeks. But I've never really felt the need to sell him. And although he's been red flagged for a while, I've just sat him on my bench. Now, there was a world where he could have been back for the blank in game week 31, in which case he would have been slightly useful and it would have saved me a transfer. But it sounds like he's definitely out for 31. Because if Dorgu was going to be back for 31, I probably would do Richards to Van Dijk this week and keep Dorgu. And it just leaves my options open a little bit for just leaves my options open a little bit for 31, but he's out. So do I not think there's a chance Dorgu is back for 31? Carrick said he's still a while away, so no, not really. Not really. It sounds like Dorgu is going to be out until probably mid-April, so definitely, almost certainly not, no. Szoboszlai or Dango, I'd go Dango over Szoboszlai. I don't think Szoboszlai or Sharda are particularly worth the money. I'd go Szoboszlai over Sharda, though. Would I have Wirtz on wildcard this week? No, I wouldn't. No, I'd go in Burmo. So my wildcard draft that I put out had Wirtz or Burmo in, depending on the press conference that we got on Wirtz. And with Wirtz looking like he's out, I'd go in Burmo. Wirtz update and replacement. Yeah, Wirtz is out of West Ham at home. He will then be considered a doubt for the Wolves away game because it's so quick. I think they play Saturday, Tuesday, or Sunday, Wednesday, but they play Tuesday or Wednesday next week. So there is a pretty quick turnaround for Liverpool. So it doesn't bode particularly well if he hasn't really trained this week, which it doesn't sound like he has. Is worth selling Enzo to Dango, but if you have to bench either Anderson, Rodgers, Bruno Fernandes, and Wilson. So it sounds like you can probably just bench Enzo. Like Dango is probably better. Dango and Wilson are probably better than Elliot Anderson, but is it worth a transfer? Is probably the question. I realised when I went to start this stream that I never scheduled it. So thank you all for tuning in, despite the fact that I never scheduled that fact that was actually going to be a stream this evening. Yeah, I don't know why I failed to schedule it. And then I was on the FPL show and I was like, oh, I'd never scheduled the stream. I'll do it when I get home. And then I just forgot. So apologies if you thought wondering where was the stream this evening. Just because I failed to... I never remembered to schedule it until about 15 minutes before it was actually going to happen. So I appreciate you all jumping in and joining the live. If you could drop a like on the stream and subscribe if you are new around here. Also with Chrome, you have the ability to have more than just a split screen. I've split my screen into 3, which for some of you might not feel crazy, but as someone who could only ever split their screen into 2, this is revolutionized everything. Everything. Is Enzo to Dango worth it to bench Wilson? Is Enzo to Dango worth it to bench Wilson? To bench Wilson? No. I wouldn't sell Enzo to Dango in order to bench Wilson. No. Just keep Enzo. I don't think Enzo is the worst keep if you can bench him this week. I think a couple of the Chelsea fixtures over the next few weeks are not bad. And I think there's a world where Enzo is better in these more difficult games than in the slightly easier ones, because when Chelsea have less of the ball, he's actually more advanced. He gets involved in the press. If there's high turnovers, that's good for him. But also when we have lots of the ball and there's a low block, he drops quite deep to get on the ball. So I think there's a world where he's actually better in some of these more difficult games. And of course, he plays in the blank. So, yeah, he has that use as well. I need to get more monitors. I've got 2 monitors already, My camera is in the middle of them. I would love to have 3 or 4, but I'm not entirely sure exactly what I would do with the other ones. I'd be looking around all over the place when I was streaming. Yeah, I don't think I'd buy Gakpo. There's a few questions in the chat about Gakpo. I don't think that's worth it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't get the benching ranking graphic in the corner made. So if you've got benching decisions, let me know. Sell João Pedro and buy Thiago for a -4. I don't think I'd do it for a hit, to be honest. The thing is, though, João Pedro is probably expected to blank, and Thiago would then need one return to pay off the hit, and then you've got probably the better forward going forward. So I'm not completely against it for a hit, but I don't think I would do it. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know what other transfers you've made. I probably would prioritize João Pedro to Thiago as a transfer before other things. So maybe then, if that's my frame of mind, is worth a hit. But yeah. Haaland or Bruno Fernandes for captain. Haaland is top for me. I understand the Bruno captain, particularly with Palace playing on Thursday, but I don't think it's enough for me to go there. I think Haaland is the one that I'll just captain Haaland again this week. I know he's not been great in terms of big hauls recently. I know he also blanked against Leeds earlier on in the season, but yeah, I think he's going to be my captain. Enzo to Dango for a hit. No, I don't think so. Should I start Hill or Timber? You have Gabriel. I would still probably play Timber over Hill, if that's the decision you're making. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree on that, but I think I would still just back the Arsenal defence over the Bournemouth defence. Cunha, Hill, Saliba, Krupi, start 2. Probably Saliba's different because he doesn't have the attacking threat. I'd play Cunha, and I'd probably play Hill over Krupi. So probably Cunha, Hill. Mike, all good. Yeah, let me take a look. Enzo, Munoz, Enzo, Guiu to Virgil, Danko, DCL, Raul, Verts, Munoz, Guiu to... I'd probably go option 3 and go Szoboszlai, Dango, Virgil, Mike. Do I think Thiago is a good captaincy punt? Against Burnley, anyone's a good captaincy punt, basically. Against Burnley, you can play anyone as your captain if you wanted to, really. So yes, like he's 3rd in my ranking, I think. So yes. Would I sell Vert? And if so, who for? If you can, like if you've got to a position where you've got 8 attackers, I probably would just bench Verts and hope he's back for game week 29. But yeah, like if you're going to sell him, yeah, it depends who 8 attackers are. That's why it's quite a difficult question to answer. Basically, my position, if you've got Vert, and a lot of people in the chat are asking, if you've got Vert and you've got a good front 8, then I would just look to bench him, or like make a transfer of selling someone like Enzo and Potts to a couple of mids to bench Vert is my preferred. But if you don't have the luxury of that, or doing like Rice and Mark Guiu to Thiago and Tavernier or something like that to bench Vert is my preferred, even if it's for a hit. But if you don't have the luxury for that, I would probably then sell Vert. Wilson and Burmo, Dango, Szoboszlai are probably the top 4. I think the updates today from Liverpool around Szoboszlai probably playing in midfield is a boost to him. Bench 1, Tavernier, Rice, Wilson for Thiago. Bench 1, Tavernier, Rice, Wilson. It's probably got to be Rice, I think. Richards or Rodon for Van Dijk. Richards. I'd rather sell Richards. Rodon's fixtures. I have actually considered a transfer path which involved buying Rodon this week in order to bench him. But it's not worth it, I don't think. So I'm not going to do that. But I have considered it. I think Rodon's actually quite a good option from next week. They've got 2 home games in 3, and Palace away is their only away game, who have not been great, and it will be in and around European fixtures for Palace as well. So let's do a captaincy poll. Haaland. It's basically Haaland, Bruno, Thiago, other. Why João Pedro over Dewsbury Hall? If I had to pick one, I just don't expect much from Everton away at Newcastle, and João Pedro has looked really good under the new manager. João Pedro or use a 4th defender, Anderson. Would I play Anderson or João Pedro? I'd probably play Anderson, I think. You can probably tell as a Chelsea fan, I don't have that much hope for the game this weekend, but like if we could take a 1-1 or something like that, then fine. But I don't expect Chelsea to be scoring that many goals. Play Reinders or Enzo? I mean, Enzo probably. Don't expect Reinders to start. Would I start a back 4 of Hill or Chaël and bench Rice? No, I'd play Rice over Hill, and I'd play Chaël over Hill, I think. Buy Dango and Virgil van Dijk for a hit. I'm reluctant to say that Van Dijk is worth a hit for anyone. I don't know who you're selling, and if you're starting Richards or like Keane or Tarkowski, then maybe it's worth a hit, but rarely are -4s for defenders worth a hit. Timber to Van Dijk or Rice to Dango? Timber to Van Dijk or Rice to Dango? I think I'd do the Dango move. I think Dango's more explosive over the next few than Rice is. And I just don't think there's that much between Timber and Van Dijk over the next 3. I know Van Dijk has hit back-to-back double-digit hauls, but I don't think there's much between Timber and Van Dijk for the next 3. And then Van Dijk in the blank. I think I'd rather do Rice to Dango than Timber to Van Dijk. Because at the end of the day, if you're not buying this week, you might go to another defender. Why don't I do Tarkowski to Van Dijk and Dorgu to Hill? Because Tarkowski's got Burnley at home next week, and I plan on freeing up the money by selling Rice. Tarkowski also plays in the blank, so I'd rather not use a transfer on that, whereas selling Rice helps my team in game week 31. Which one of Rice, Rodgers to Mbeumo or hold the transfer? I'd sell Rice before Rodgers. Again, Rodgers away at Wolves this week, at home to West Ham in the blank. As much as I don't love Rodgers for his price, I don't love him as a pick. He's got Wolves this week, and then he's got West Ham at home in the blank. One of those. Is a -4 for getting rid of Tarkowski and Sanchez in net. If you can just bench, like if you've got Sanchez, I would just play Dubravka this week. I don't think there's I don't think any team has above a 36% chance of a clean sheet this week. So I don't think any goalkeeper is really worth it. I would just bench Sanchez, play Dubravka. Thiago captain, I don't hate it. Haaland is captain for me. I think Thiago away at Burnley is still a pretty good option. Part of me thinks that after the result they had last week, that they expect a bit of a bounce back from Brentford. But yeah, I'm not sure I have it in me after the performances recently from him. Cool. Bowen, João Pedro, Enzo, Timber out. Haaland, Thiago, Dango, Hill in from -8. I mean, they're all upgrades. I don't love a -8, but it will probably pay off. And I'd start Senesi over Hill. Enzo and Strand Larsen to Sharda / Mbeumo and Thiago. Yes, probably would do that for -4. Badjo, I wouldn't buy Sharda though. Timber to Van Dijk or Rice to Dango, we did. I'd favour Rice out. Thiago and Mbermo in for Pedro and Vert. Or Van Dijk and Szoboszlai for Dorgu and Vert. -4, have Wilson, O'Reilly. So hang on. Thiago in for João Pedro or Van Dijk for Dorgu. If you've got 3 good enough defenders, I wouldn't do the defender move there, Jonathan. Liz, benching, headache. Attackers are Haaland, Ekitike, Thiago, Rice. I can already tell you. Oh, you've got Anderson. I'd probably play Rice over Anderson. I probably would bench Anderson. Which one of Rice, Rodgers? We did 3 free transfers. Munoz to Van Dijk, Enzo to Dango, and Rice to Wilson. Munoz to Van Dijk, Enzo to Dango, and Rice to Wilson. Yes, all good moves, Joycer. And start 3, Gabriel, Virgil van Dijk, Hill, Timber, Mark Gay. I actually think that Mark Gay is quite an easy bench in a lot of these benching decisions. Like, I'd play Hill over Gay, I'd play Timber over Gay, I'd play Van Dijk. He's probably bottom in that list. I'd start Gabriel, I'd start Van Dijk, and then it's Hill or Timber. I probably would play Timber over Hill. Would I start Wilson, Rice? You moved Enzo to Dango. I'd start Wilson over Rice. I think Rice would be the one I'd bench there. If we sell Vert, who to buy? The issue is, the reason I don't actually love selling Vert is a lot of the options that I'd want to buy are much cheaper unless you're going to Mbermo or Bruno. If not, you're probably going down to Wilson or Dango. And that just leaves a lot of money in the bank. So if you've got the luxury that you could potentially bench him. The other one is Semenyo. But as I've said, with a blank in 31, with potential rotation in game week 30 in between the 2 Champions League games, I would not be going Semenyo. If no money is an issue, would I go Thiago or Ekitike? I'd probably go Thiago. Ekitike's look good, but without Verts, I think their attack massively suffers. So, yeah. Have Gabriel and Timber. Should I do Timber to Virgil van Dijk? Have 1 free transfer and Anderson and Sanchez in defense. You have Gabriel and Timber. Should I do Timber to Van Dijk? If you've got nothing else to do, then yeah, like, would I rather Van Dijk than Timber for the next 4? Probably. But I don't think there's that much in it. Like, I wouldn't be doing it for a hit. I wouldn't be scrambling to do it over other transfers. I think Timber to Van Dijk is a slight upgrade, but I don't think there's that much in it. Timber to Hill and Enzo to Dango and Guiu to Ekitike. Yeah, 3 transfers I quite like. Yeah. I have just seen a tweet, right? This is completely off topic. Who's a better striker? Haaland or Drogba? Haaland or Drogba? Drogba. Haaland for sure. Drogba. Haaland by a mile. Haaland by a mile is madness. Drogba's record is actually average. Yeah, but like, who wants a striker who's going to score goals? Like, we would all rather a striker who will score in a Champions League final, an FA Cup final when you need them, rather than a player who scores 35 Premier League goals against teams that he should be scoring 45 goals against. I'm going to do a poll. Right, Haaland is 70% captain, Bruno's 20%. Right, we can come back to that one. Who is a better striker? This is what you've all tuned in for. Haaland, Drogba. Haaland easily. What? What is going on? What is going on? Okay, like 60-40 is a fine split. Like, I think it's close. Like, I think it's a debate. Haaland, of course. Right. Here's a different question, right? If you're going into a Champions League final, are you really telling me in a Champions League final you'd rather Haaland than prime Drogba? If you had a Champions League final today, you would rather Haaland than Drogba. In a Champions League final. No, I'm not. I know. This is going to be a short poll. This is going to take over this stream. Listen, over a Premier League season, maybe Haaland will be better because he'll make sure you win those games that you should. But in a Champions League final, prime Haaland, not current Erling. You can't, like, the current is as prime as Haaland gets at the moment. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm biased. It's 60-40. I mean, right. Anyway, let's get back to it because I'm now getting baited by 60% of the chat. People saying where was Drogba in 08? I mean, Drogba in 2012 has done more than Haaland's ever done in the Champions League. Anyway, let's get back to FPL. I didn't realize this would be. Haaland is incredible. Like, this is the other thing with these sorts of debates, right? Is just because I think one is better than the other doesn't mean that I think the other one is a terrible player. It's like when people say, do you prefer Messi or do you prefer Ronaldo? When you pick one side, it doesn't mean that you think the other one is a rubbish footballer. You can appreciate both of them. You can think they're both good. But anyway, Dorgu to Kanate, Enzo to Szoboszlai opinions. I'd rather do Dorgu to Van Dijk and Enzo to Wilson or Dango personally. But if you want Szoboszlai, Kanate is an interesting alternative to Van Dijk. Cash on the bench from Burmo or Dango. I'd bench Cash for both of Burmo and Dango, yeah. Is it worth to sell João Pedro for Ekatike? Yes. Yeah. Enzo to Semenyo. Semenyo comes with too much of a risk. I think. Enzo and Cherky. I'd probably play Cherky and just hope he plays over Enzo. Probably. Why Szoboszlai over Gravenberch? Back in midfield now. Free kicks, corners, just routes to points. I don't really like the Gravenberch pick. I don't think his attacking return is good enough, and there are other players who have better DEFCON than him. Szoboszlai or Dango. I just go for the cheaper one in most of them. Dango. Arsenal versus Everton has been moved to Saturday the 14th instead of Sunday. Yes, it has. And Manchester City, West Ham is also going to move. I presume if they're announcing them that they're also announcing that one as well, because it was in the clause when the fixtures came out that if Manchester City played on the Wednesday in the Champions League, that their game against West Ham was going to move. So we're presuming that it is, and that will make a later deadline. Prioritize Enzo to Dango or Bowen to Thiago. Prioritize Enzo to Dango or Bowen to Thiago. Bowen to Thiago, probably. If I could pick Dango or Thiago, I'd pick Thiago. So, Dan, team is lining up. Would I bench boost this? Raya, so your bench is Dubravka, Gabriel, Anderson, and Dango. Probably, yes. Yeah. Bench Garner, Madueke, Barry. You got stuck with them. Was that filtering on from something else? Don't know. Gosh, Madueke and Barry. Yeah. Definitely be benching them. If you have 2 transfers and want to get Van Dijk by selling Rice and then Dango Tara because I have Wilson, or do I think you should roll? Yeah, like if I already had Wilson, I would still be doing the transfers and I'd just be buying Dango. So yeah, if I had Wilson over Anderson, I would still be doing the transfers and then just buying Dango over Wilson. Who should I start, Cash or Timber? Timber over Cash. Wolves look quite good. Saar to Szoboszlai or João Pedro to Ekitike. Probably Ekitike. And then look at Saar next week potentially. But then actually after this week, Saar's got Spurs and Leeds, so you could play him in those 2. But I'd rather do the Ekitike move, I think. Asa, apologies. Let me take a look at your super chat. Rise, Pedro and Timber, Richards, Mukiele to Wilson, Thiago and Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, I probably would sell Mukiele or Richards. I'd keep Timber if you can, or save 1 for next game week. If Timber, then Rise can go to Wirtz over Wilson. No, well, Wirtz is out, so you keep Timber. Wirtz to Szoboszlai or Rodgers. I wouldn't be buying Rodgers. I would not be spending that money on Rodgers. Timber and Evan Nielsen to Hill and Ekitike. Yes, probably would do those. Both feel like reasonable transfers. Yep. Would I prioritize Van Dijk or Ekitike? If it's Timber leaving, then I'd prioritize Ekitike because I don't think the gap between Timber and Van Dijk is particularly different. I don't think there's much between them. Is Dango worth a hit? Probably not. Probably not. If it's Enzo to Dango, again, like, is João Pedro to Thiago? Is Dango for Enzo worth a hit? Probably not this week, but could it pay off the hit this week and then you've got the one you want long term? Like, yes, like it is possible. It's not a definitely no, but the cautious part of me would say no. Is Ekitike worth a hit? Probably not. Again, with all the hits, it depends what it does for the rest of your squad and who you're benching as a result, but is Ekitike worth a hit? He's got to get 2 returns effectively for it to be worthwhile. So no. Start Krupi or Rice? Probably Rice. Sunderland still favour performances defensively. Krupi's not definitely nailed, particularly with another game on Tuesday. Verdict on Wirtz is that he's out for the weekend. I wouldn't buy Sharda. Yeah, I don't think I'd buy Shard. I just see all the other mids, like even Szoboszlai at the same price. I feel like I prefer. Gabriel or Kanate. Gabriel, always Gabriel. Never bench Gabriel. Chelsea can't defend set pieces as well, particularly well. So I'd go Gabriel. Can I do a no Salah, no Haaland draft? I mean, I don't really know what you spend the money on. You probably go Thiago, Ekitike, and then one of Calvert-Lewin or Raul Jimenez. Bruno and Burmo, and then like Wilson, Dango, Semenyo probably. Do I expect Szoboszlai will play in the Wirtz role, or do you think he'll play deeper? I think he'll probably play in the in the Verts role. Maybe not in the sole Verts role, like they might rejig it slightly to have 2 players in the 10. But he will play further advanced. I'm almost certain of it, especially with Frimpong and Gomez back. Bring in Dango or Mbeumo. You feel Mbeumo has been too consistent recently. I'm just not sure it's worth the money difference. Now, you might not spend the money this week, but there might be a transfer in a couple of weeks that the money is useful to you for. If they were the same price, yeah, it would be Mbeumo. But I keep on stifling a yawn, as anyone can't tell. It's been a couple of... With the Champions League football, what it means often with the Champions League football... Again, many of you may not care. But anyway, with the Champions League football, it often means that I leave my videos to make after them. Because it will... Like, if someone was to get injured or anything like that, I wait to hear press conferences, see what managers say, see full-time results. So I like... Again, people have much harder... pressing jobs than me, absolutely, but it has been a couple of late nights this week, hence the stifling a yawn. And then I was up very early to get to the FPL show this morning, so I apologize if you think I'm being rude. You are not boring me. I'm just quite tired this week. That is all today. Rise to Szoboszlai, Potts to Wilson next game week. Anderson, Defcon. Yeah, Rise to Szoboszlai if it leaves you Potts to Wilson. Yep. Scotty, I appreciate it. Is it worth the -4 for Garner to Wilson? Probably not a hit, no. Probably not. -4 Mukiele to Konsa or someone else. You have Van Dijk. Mukiele to Konsa or someone else. I wouldn't go Konsa. Definitely wouldn't buy Konsa. Konsa doesn't get Defcon. They don't keep enough clean sheets. Yeah. I'd rather buy Hill. I'd rather buy probably Bassey of Fulham. I'd rather buy Maguire. I would not be buying Konsa. Rice to Dango. You already have Thiago and Wilson. Yeah. If I was buying a midfielder... If I was buying a midfielder this week and I already owned Wilson, it would almost certainly be Dango. I'm actually quite jealous of people buying Dango this week. I just think for the next 4, if I can only buy one, which is the plan, is that Wilson is the better of them. Yeah. I think Wilson for the next 4 if you can only buy one. But if you think you'll also buy Wilson, then it's Dango. So there are lots of permutations. But also, if you've already wildcarded, Elliot Anderson also needs to come into the equation, because between now and 38, Anderson may well outscore Dango and Wilson. Mbeumo or Dominic for Verts. Dom for Mbeumo, Solanke for Verts. Gives you Van Dijk in 29. Jonathan, sorry, I don't understand the question. Mbeumo or Szoboszlai for Verts. Dom gives you Van Dijk in 29. Yes, I would probably just go down. Like, I'm not sure Mbeumo is particularly worth the money now. So if it's Szoboszlai or it's Wilson or Dango, then any of them are fine. Listening from the slopes of Park City, you have Van Dijk, 2 free transfers. Should I do Rice and Enzo to Wilson and Dango this week? Yes, but a lot of people are doing the sort of Rice, Enzo, Dango, Rice and Enzo out combination. It gives people a benching headache. Like, if I had Anderson and Dewsbury Hall effectively out to Dango and Wilson, like, people are benching good players. That's the only issue. If it doesn't give you a benching headache, then I think it's fine. Why am I not considering Rice out for Szoboszlai? Because Wilson gives me Van Dijk for Dorgu. Van Dijk, yeah. Wilson gives me Van Dijk. Yeah. So that's the plan with my 2 transfers. Is Rice to Wilson and Dorgu to Van Dijk. Rice to Wilson, Dorgu to Van Dijk is the plan. There's not really anything that can change between now and the deadline that will change that. Yeah, the only thing that would change it is if there was something that implied that Dorgu would be back for 31, but there's no reason we'll hear anything on that in the next half an hour, in the next hour even. Senesi, Ryan, Wilson. Senesi, Ryan, Wilson, bench one, and Petrovic or Dubravka. Bench one, I play Petrovic over Dubravka. Senesi, Ryan, Wilson. I'd probably bench the defender. I wouldn't really want to bench any of them. Yeah. But if you're going Petrovic, then you'll bench Senesi, I think. So you got one Bournemouth defender is probably enough. Bench one, João Pedro, Rice, Anderson, or Wilson. Probably João Pedro with the fixture that he's got away at Arsenal. I don't expect loads from us there. To collect -4 for João Pedro to Ekitike. Not really. Not really worth a hit. João Pedro to Ekitike for a hit. Probably not, especially without Wirtz there. Because I actually think the Chelsea fixtures from next week are not that bad. And from next week, you might wonder about keeping João Pedro. It's just this week it's not great with good fixtures for players like Ekitike, Thiago, Raul Jimenez has just scored a brace, Calvert-Lewin from next week. But I think once you get past this week, you won't particularly feel the need to do that for a hit. So I probably wouldn't sell João Pedro for a hit. -4 for Wirtz to Semenyo, or just bench Wirtz for Alderete or Enzo. I'd be more inclined to do the hit for Enzo to someone and bench Wirtz is probably what I'd look at. Again, if you can have Wirtz bench this week, hope he's back for 29, if not looking 30. Would I sell Ekitike for Thiago? No. I wouldn't move between Ekitike and Thiago. If you want to buy the other one, I would try and find another way. And if not, you just stick with the one you've got. I just hope Rice only hauls 2 or 3 weeks after I sell him, because if he scores this week, I mean, as a Chelsea fan, I've got double pain, right? I'm selling Rice so he could do well, and it's also then against Chelsea, which is also a double blow if I look to buy him. You need ranks, so you're generally thinking triple Brentford attack. On free hit, I had triple Brentford attack. Free hit this week, I had Thiago, Dango, and Sharda. I can take down the poll, I think. I think I can take down the poll. Thank you all for joining, by the way. We've got just under an hour to go till the deadline. If you are new around here, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much for joining. I need to also put it in subscribe only mode now. I have although I can split my screen into more areas, it then gives me very small screens, but there we go. Who's better captain between Haaland and Bruno? Haaland will be my captain. If he'll turn out to be the best captain, we'll have to wait and see, but I just don't think I've seen enough from Bruno recently to do it. Start João Pedro or Anderson? Anderson of Fulham. Is it worth buying Virgil van Dijk and you have Gabriel, Anderson and O'Reilly in your team? Is it worth buying Van Dijk and you have Gabriel, Anderson and O'Reilly? You'd probably bench Anderson. Like, Van Dijk is better than Anderson this week. Yes. So if it's a transfer you want to do that makes your squad better and it means you're benching Anderson of Fulham, I have no issue with that. The plan is still Rice to Wilson, Dorgu to Van Dijk. That's still the plan. It's been the plan all week. There's been no price changes since Monday to force me to do either of those transfers, so I've not needed to. But the plan remains the same. Rice to Wilson, Dorgu to Van Dijk. I do like Dango. Dango has pushed Wilson very close in my mind over the past 24 hours. I think Dango is more explosive, and that's what makes me wonder about Dango. I think Dango is more likely to hit a 15-pointer over the next couple of games than Wilson is. But he's also then more likely to miss all the chances he gets. So, 1 open play goal for Haaland in 10 matches. Yep. And that's why people are wondering about captaining Bruno, Thiago, Ekitike, or even Mbermo. And they're all decent alternatives to him. But it is a risk, right? And as much as playing this game, we want to pick the players who are the most exciting and, is Bruno captain a good pick? Like, you're going against the most highly owned and most captain player in the game, which I don't feel like is worth it unless it feels really, really obvious. And I don't think it does this week. Long-term, Dango is also much better. Well, their fixtures after the blank in 31 are better. Like, they've got Everton at home, Fulham at home, West Ham at home as well. So if you're not on wildcard 32, you might also want to have a look at Dango more long-term. Wirtz's injury is not expected to be back to be that bad. He's expected back by game week 30. Whether he's back for Tuesday, Wednesday for Liverpool is the one that's uncertain, but he's expected back. They play Tuesday. Yeah, like, that's the doubt. Like, is he back Tuesday for Wolves? We don't know. Hasn't trained yet this week, but should be back by game week 30. Is it worth a -4 for Bruno G to Szoboszlai? Bruno G to Szoboszlai. I mean, Bruno G's out, so a -4 for Bruno G to anyone is probably worth a hit this week. Am I keeping Dorgu? No. Dorgu's going to Van Dijk. I did also consider the Rice to Wirtz move and Dorgu and Richards out to cheaper defenders, but with Wirtz out, it's then obvious that Van Dijk is the play. You're lining up my next X post with the KDH first bench and 2 playing defenders in the starting 11. No, to be fair, I'm going to be selling Dorgu, so I won't be able to do any auto subs for a while until another one of my players probably gets injured, or we get to the blank in game week 21, in which case I'll start all of the players with a blank. Leeds just 1 clean sheet in the last 8. Yeah, but I don't think they've conceded that many over that period, though. I feel like it's not been like big goals conceded. Am I crazy for bringing in Tavernier? You're not. My issue with the Bournemouth mids in general is they have 2 games in very quick succession, which they're not really used to. They've got some of them returning from injury, like Tavernier and Brooks, that should go back into the starting 11, but it's 2 quick games. I think Tavernier definitely starts one of the next 2, and he's first choice going forward. It's just whether Tavernier can start Saturday, Tuesday. And I think it applies to Brooks, and I also think it applies to Ryan. Like, we could see a front 4, because how many attackers have they got, right? They've got Krupi and Evan Nilsson. They've then got Adley, Ryan, Tavernier, Brooks. And I'm probably missing someone else. Who else even is there that's been playing in those positions over the past few weeks? Or is it those 6? That's 6 players. They're probably all going to start at least one. Of those 6, Kluivert's injured. Yeah? Yeah, Kluivert's still out. Of ones who's available, Jimenez could play right midfield. Alex Scott could play number 10. But effectively, you've probably got, at Bournemouth, 6 attackers for 4 spots across 2 games. So 6 attackers for 8 spots, effectively, across 2 games. I expect all of those players to start at least one. Or to start one. Which means only 2 of the 4 are going to play back-to-back games. And I think Evan Nilsson will be one of those. Which makes me think that then only one of the others is going to play back-to-back games. I'm pretty certain it won't be Adley. Which leaves, I don't think it will be Brooks either. Which leaves Krupi, Tavernier and Ryan. One of them playing both. That's probably where my head's at on Bournemouth. That it could be Tavernier playing back-to-back games. But when they've got so many options, It all just comes with a risk. Now, maybe Evan Nielsen doesn't start both games. Maybe Evan Nielsen gets one and Kruppi gets one. Like, this is all possible. And maybe they get early subs. But there is minutes risks there for Bournemouth attackers. I think you'd do well to have any Bournemouth attacker play more than 120. Or 130, maybe. 65-minute subs. Like, if you see any Bournemouth attacker play more than 130 over the next 2 games, I think you'll have done well out of it. Is probably where I'm at. There will be someone who does it, but predicting which of those 6 that it is the hard. Van Dijk for -4, just Munoz if not. Van Dijk for -4. Yeah, like, would I take a hit to do Munoz to Van Dijk this week? Probably not. I'm just not sure it's worth a hit. Really not sure it's worth a hit. Tarkowski to Van Dijk for a hit. Again, I'm just not sure it's worth a -4. I mean, maybe I'm being too cautious and maybe I'm being too passive and maybe the -4 will pay off straight away. He's been great recently, Van Dijk. But they should have conceded to Forest. He got a 96th minute assist and bonus points to go with it. That game could easily have finished with a goal to Forest and no Van Dijk return, and we would not be sitting here taking -4s for Van Dijk. It's not a hit for me, I don't think. I didn't really see anything on Coyote. Let me take a look. Let me have a look. He'll be assessed. Hickey is a major doubt. Coyote, I mean, you can start him if you've got him, but yeah, he's still a doubt. Start Ryan or Anderson. Ryan if you've got. You don't want to be benching him. Your team isn't great. Would I wildcard? Be smart. If you've got a really bad team and you want a wildcard now, just make sure you've only got 3 players who blank in 31. So that's Haaland, Gabriel, and either Semenyo, but most likely O'Reilly. And then you don't have to make a transfer and then just plan to roll. Do not pick any short-term picks. Like, yeah, just think long-term with it. I don't mind the early wildcard because I think the doubles are looking a bit rubbish. Bruno Cap, yeah, if you want to go against Haaland, he's my number 1. Who is more important, Van Dijk or Thiago? Thiago. I think the Van Dijk hype is being blown out of the water. Yeah. After back-to-back double digits, what's the chance he does it again? Has any defender, apart from Trent, hit 3 double digits in a row? Practically ever. I mean, I know just because he's done it twice, it shouldn't impact the percentage chance of it happening again, but it does in our minds a little bit. Thoughts on bringing in Ryan instead of Dango? I wouldn't do that, just based off what I said about all the minutes for those Bournemouth attackers. If you can get to Dango, I would. Would I do Van Heck or Tarkowski to Virgil this week? Probably Van Heck. I don't love the Brighton fixtures. Haaland will be my captain. Yeah, I'm not going to move it. Do I think it's great? No. Do I think Leeds away is a great fixture? No. Do I think they'll do well against Haaland? Probably. Yeah, but no. No, he's going to be my captain because I'm also not sold by Bruno that much. 5 blanks in 31. Do I take a -4 or a wild card? Well, you've got a couple of transfers between now and then. So hopefully you can just fix it. Hopefully you can fix it. Thiago and Szoboszlai or Ekitike and Dango? That is a fantastic question. I'd go Ekitike, Dango, I think. That is close though. Thiago, Szoboszlai or Ekitike, Dango. Oh, and you might have won. That might be one of the hardest questions I've had to answer all week. Thiago, Szoboszlai or Ekitike, Dango? That kind of depends on what we think on Szoboszlai. I think I'd go Ekitike, Dango. Start Senesi or Rogers? Senesi, yeah. Oh, no, wait. Senesi or Rogers? Probably Rogers. If you've got him away at Wolves, I'd want to start him. I wouldn't want to be in a position where I'm benching one of them anyway, but I would probably favour Rogers. Petrovic or Verbruggen? Probably Petrovic just. It's close though. Probably just Petrovic. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . penalty taker and penalty merchant and set piece taker versus shooting demons. Who is that? Like what? I'm presuming is that Bruno versus Haaland? Penalty merchant and set piece taker. Is that Bruno versus shooting demon? Is that Haaland? I mean, I'm going Haaland over Bruno, but that might be someone completely different. That might be, I don't know, someone else versus someone else. Dango versus Wilson. Chris, 3 free transfers, Enzo to Dango, bench cash, or roll and start cash. I'd do Enzo to Dango and bench cash, yeah. Yep. Chalobah to Van Dijk now, or João Pedro to Ekitike next week, both on the bench if you roll. If you can just bench Chalobah, if you're not starting them and if you're happy with the players you've got in your team, then just roll, I think. But if one of them feels like a big upgrade on the player you're starting, like if it would mean benching Enzo or something, then maybe. Start Krupi or Munoz. I'd probably play Krupi. Van Dijk to Timber and Rice to Wilson or Szoboszlai. Van Dijk to Timber or Rice to Wilson. I mean, presumably you mean Timber to Van Dijk. I'd rather sell Rice. I'd rather sell Rice than Timber to Van Dijk. I actually think West Ham have been quite good recently. Some of their data's not that bad either. Like if you look at the data. Oh. Have I got the data downloaded? I do here. West Ham are 10th for, when that might have even been last week's. They were 10th for XG. Let me see. Here we go. West Ham, West Ham are the most improved team for attacking data over the last 6. West Ham have created, now a lot of this came against Bournemouth, but they have created the 3rd most XG over the last 6. 14th over the season, 3rd over the last 6. They are just below Liverpool and Chelsea for XG over the last 6. West Ham have seen the biggest change in XG compared to their season data to the last 6. I do think that people are overestimating the Liverpool defence. Liverpool also, in the last 6, have dropped from 3rd to 8th for expected goals conceded. They have been leaking chances despite the fact that Van Dijk has hit a couple of big returns over the past couple of weeks. I'm not saying get Somerville. I'm not saying don't buy Van Dijk. I am just saying that I think people are overestimating how locked in Van Dijk points are this week. Over the next 4, the Liverpool fixtures are good, but you've also got a West Ham team who look much better. Why captain Haaland over Bruno? I've just not seen particularly much from Bruno to make me particularly want to captain him, if I'm honest. Rodgers or Rice to Mbeumo for free or roll? I'd be tempted to roll and then do Rodgers to Mbeumo next week if you still want Mbeumo. I do think the fixtures have passed a little bit from Mbeumo. Like, I know he's being consistent, but I think there'll be a player at a cheaper price who does just as well as Mbeumo. I'm surprised. I know he's done well recently and he's been quite consistent, but I think I'd rather just save the money on someone else. Would I bench Elliot Anderson or Krupi Jr.? I'd probably play Anderson over Krupi. Timber to Van Dijk or Rice to Wilson? Yeah, I'd rather sell Rice than Timber this week, I think. Rice and Mane out for Tavernier and Thiago. Yep. Even for a hit, probably. If you're starting both of them and it improves your team, yes. Why so low on cash? You have to play him or Enzo or Dewsbury Hall. I'd probably play Dewsbury Hall out of a lot of them. Just Villa defence is pretty hit and miss. Wolves have been better. I mean, they're still right down at the bottom for XG, so it's not the worst play, but I just think Wolves have looked better. Best midfield for Vert's replacement. I would just come down to Wilson, Dango, if I'm honest. I don't think any of the others are particularly worth the money. I think that's the big question. Are any of the premium ones actually worth the money? Or are you spending the money because the money's there? And although the money might be there now, in a couple of weeks, if there's another transfer, like a few weeks ago, there will have been someone who said, oh, this transfer's fine. I don't need the money for anything else. And now they're sat there wanting to buy Van Dijk and they don't have the money for it. So although the money might not be there in front of, or the use for the money might not be there right in front of you at this moment, the money will always be useful to you at some point. You might just not know it now. So don't spend the money for the sake of it. Do I think that Mbeumo definitely outscores Wilson and Dango over the next 4? No. I think it's quite close. I think Mbeumo probably edges it, but I don't think it's much in it. And if I don't think there's much in it, am I spending 3 million more on them? No. So I'm not sure I'd buy Mbeumo now. Zoidi. Bowen to Ekitike or Timber to Van Dijk. Yeah, Bowen to Ekitike is a bigger upgrade than Timber to Van Dijk. I've sort of talked myself into the corner of not liking Van Dijk. It's not that. I just think people are overestimating what the Liverpool defence has been like over the past couple of games. They've been very fortunate, particularly against Forest. Don't captain Haaland. I don't think it's the best fixture. I'm fully on board with that, but yeah. Evan Nilsson to Thiago or Timber to Van Dijk. Evan Nilsson to Thiago or Timber to Van Dijk. Again, I'd rather do the forward move. Evan Nilsson this week, I don't think is a massive priority sell with the next couple of games they've got, though. That's why I hesitate on that. Oh, Evan Nilsson's been frustrating. I'd probably sell him, yeah. Football TV. You can't afford Van Dijk. You have Gabriel, Tarkowski, Richards, Dorgu, Mukiele, 3 free transfers, 1.7 in the bank. What should you do? I'm guessing, can you afford Dorgu or can you afford Mukiele, Richards to Hill? Richards, Mukiele to Hill, Van Dijk. I think you probably can. I don't know what your selling price on Mukiele is, but he's quite expensive now. Even if your selling price on Mukiele is as low as it goes, which would be 4.3, that would free up 0.2. So you should be able to afford it. You could go straight from Richards to Van Dijk, no? Semenyo a no-go. For me, Semenyo and O'Reilly are no-goes now based off the Game Week 30 risk and Game Week 31. But do I wish I had Semenyo and O'Reilly for the next 2? Absolutely. So if you've got 4 or 5 transfers and you want to take a risk on O'Reilly or Semenyo, I don't have a problem with that. Just what's worth it further down the line versus now. The transfers will be useful when the blanks and doubles come. Now, again, City might lose to Newcastle. They don't blank and then it's not worth us stressing about it now. And that's also possible. So if you don't buy, I will buy Van Dijk because he is the best defender to buy this week. But I also don't think people need to be taking hits to buy him. How come I'm not captaining Thiago? Just really poor recent form for him in terms of finishing. Basically. And yeah. You don't have enough for Dango. Shall I go Gravenberch or Ryan? I'd probably go Tavernier, I think, or Anderson. I'm not sure I'd go Ryan. Just a young player new to the league. There feels like that's the place where there could be rotation. You don't have enough for Dango. Shall I go? We did that. Start Hill or Anderson. Probably Hill. Choose between Gravenberch or Anderson. I'd go Anderson over Gravenberch. Start Rodgers or Anderson. Rodgers over Anderson. Is João Pedro to Ekitike worth a hit? Probably not, no. Andersen or Hill. I'd play Hill. Should I do Timber to Van Dijk or Rice to Wilson? Yeah, I prefer Rice out to Timber out. It's been quite... It also depends a little bit on what else you've got in your team, because it is close, but I think I'd rather sell Rice. It also frees up more money. The same two people, Will and Rothermere, are starting Anderson or Wilson. Start Anderson or Wilson. Start Anderson or Wilson. Wilson over Anderson. For any specific week, it's always the more explosive player. Should I start DCL or Garner? Probably DCL, home fixture. Play Nunez, Palmer or Pedro? Probably Palmer. Yeah. Palmer's a difficult one. If you're not selling him, I understand the want or the question of benching him, but you have both Tavernier and Wilson who to sell Rice for. Dango is the other one, unless you want to go Szoboszlai. If you don't want 3 cheap mids, I'd go Szoboszlai. Haaland or Bruno captain? Haaland cap for me over Bruno, yeah. Rice to Mbeumo. Rice to Mbeumo, yeah. Like, I'm not sure Mbeumo's worth the money. Like, if you've got the money in the bank to do Rice to Mbeumo, I don't think Mbeumo's a bad buy, but I don't think Mbeumo's worth the price tag. I feel like you're spending the money for the sake of it. If you couldn't afford Mbeumo, you wouldn't be saying, oh, it's really annoying, I can't afford him. You'd just be buying Dango or Wilson, and I just think they're better value. The money will be useful at some point. Gabriel or Rice to start? Probably Gabriel. With what I said about West Ham having improved, would I prioritise Dorgu to Van Dijk instead of Rice to Wilson Dango? I mean, Dorgu to Van Dijk is quite a big upgrade, so it depends who you're starting in your defence. Yeah. There's a lot of if, buts, and maybes, it feels like this stream. Start Timber or Anderson? Timber over Anderson, I think. I think people are moving off Arsenal because it gets them to Van Dijk, but I think Timber's still a fine play. You think Palmer plays 90 this time? Yes, and then I think he has... Well, probably, yeah. I know Oscar's been going back and forth with captaincy all day. It's Haaland. Just tell him it's Haaland. Would I do bar up to Sharda for a hit? Again, I don't think Sharda's worth the money. I don't think Mbeumo's massively worth the money. I'm not sure Szoboszlai is, but I like Szoboszlai the most out of those 3. I would just buy Wilson, Dango, and take the money. You'll be more frustrated, I think, if you go for the expensive one and they're outscored by the cheaper one than the other way around. Because at least with the cheaper one, they're cheaper, and if something goes wrong, it's more easy to deal with. But if you go to Mbeumo and you spend all the money on that, or you go to Sharda and they're outscored by Wilson and they're outscored by Dango, that's when it's going to be frustrating. I would just go for the cheaper one, I think. Pedro and Enzo to Thiago and Dango or Szoboszlai. Pedro and Enzo to Thiago and Dango or Szoboszlai for -4. Yeah, Thiago and Dango. I'd go to Dango over Szoboszlai. Right, with just over half an hour to go until the deadline, I have drunk all my water, so I need to nip for a wee. I'll be back in 1 minute. How are we? Someone said I'm making transfers in another tab. I'm not. I can click refresh. This is my new Chrome life. Would I start Ryan or Anderson? I'd play Ryan. In any week, I'd always favour the more explosive player over Anderson. It's just over a long period of time. There's going to be a week where Anderson scores a goal. He's going to score between now and the end of the season. I just hope I own him and I start him in the week that he scores, because that will be the best week of my season when he finally does. And I won't stop talking about it for the rest of the season. Right, we're into the final half an hour. I've got a couple of transfers to make. Dorgu and Rice to Van Dijk and Wilson is the plan. Wirtz is out, for those people asking. The best Wirtz replacement. Lots of Wirtz questions. So Wirtz is out. He might be back for Wolves. He might not. In terms of replacements, I just think with midfielders that you're buying, I like Szoboszlai if you trust him to be playing in midfield a lot. I don't think Rodgers is worth buying. I don't think Schada's worth buying. And I like Mbeumo, but I'm also not certain that Mbeumo's worth the money. I just think if I was buying midfielders, if I had to make transfers this week and I didn't own Mbeumo, I would first of all be buying Wilson, and I would second of all be buying Dango. And then I might be considering a Szoboszlai or a Wilson, or an Mbeumo. I just don't think I'd be spending the money on the premium ones if I didn't have to. It's one of those situations in FPL that we get to where you think, oh, he's more expensive, so I should if I've got the money, I should spend the money, because someone who's more expensive will just be a better pick because they're more expensive. It's like I'd rather captain a premium player than a cheap player. It was like when Palmer blew up and he was like 6 million or 5 million. No one captained him because he's too cheap. And in our minds, we have a mental block about captaining expensive players. Captaining cheap players. I think people want to spend the money because the money is there. Not because people actually think the expensive picks are better than the cheap picks. My top mids to buy are Wilson, Dango, probably Mbeumo, and then Szoboszlai, I think. The thing with Mbeumo is, do I think he outscores the others? Probably, but is it worth it? Is the money worth it? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. Would I rather buy Mbeumo or Wilson if I had the money for Mbeumo? I think Mbeumo will score more points, but the money will be useful for you for something else. Anyway, ranted enough. We ranted enough. Schade over Szoboszlai, surely. I just don't think Schade is better than Dango. So for me, there is no world that I could buy Schade. So there is a world where Szoboszlai is useful because Szoboszlai is the best Liverpool midfielder to buy. So there is a world where, despite the fact that Schade versus Szoboszlai might feel quite close, there is no world where I'd buy Schade, because in my mind, if I wanted a Brentford attacker that's not Thiago, I'd buy Dango. But if I wanted a Liverpool midfielder, it would be Szoboszlai. So I think Szoboszlai is better than Schade probably anyway, especially with Gomez and Frimpong back. Gordon as a differential, probably not. I know he's playing more advanced, but yeah. Lamens, if you want a new goalkeeper, one to consider for the next few. I don't think the next few games are as good, but they've been better defensively, Manchester United. Fund Marguerite to Thiago by selling Mbeumo to Wilson or Timber to Hill. Fund Guy to Thiago by selling Mbeumo to Wilson or Timber to Hill. Timber to Hill. As much as I think Mbeumo's not worth the money over the others, I wouldn't sell him. Is it time to move away from Chelsea players? Yeah, the only one I'd consider really keeping is Palmer if you don't have something to use the money on straight away, or João Pedro. But I think there are better options. Like, no one wildcarding this week is having any Chelsea, are they? I'm not rolling. I'm definitely not rolling. My team is at the moment definitely not good enough to roll. 2 transfers will be made. The plan is, and we can always get plan FPL up, and we can have a look. We'll have a look. Of course, we'll have a look. And we can see new browser, got to log in. Right, I'll log in afterwards. There we go. So the plan is Dorgu out and Rice out. Wilson in and Van Dijk in. I'm just buying back players that I sold. Anderson over Dewsbury Hall. GW28. I haven't logged in. Right. Dewsbury Hall in for Anderson and Tarkowski in for Anderson. Now, benching Anderson home to West Ham next week feels rubbish, but at least I have bench cover in case something was to happen. I could also play Mbermo over Anderson. See, if anyone's wondering what the benefit of a Fantasy Football Scout membership is when you're using Plan FPL, this is exactly it. You don't get projected points or like optimizing for your team for future game weeks unless you have it. Anyway, if I had the Scout, I'd be able to optimize and it would do all that for me. Anyway, so that's the plan. Game week 30, again, Anderson comes back in place of Dewsbury Hall. Richards back in place of Tarkowski, and that's that. I could play Anderson away at Forest, or I play Richards. It's the Anderson derby, right? So I could play the Anderson derby again. It's one of them. But I'll probably roll again, I think. Game week 31, I can roll. I can roll. This would put me up to 5 free transfers if I get and roll in 31. Could I make my team slightly better? Potentially. But the issue is I'd only have 0.1 in the bank. So there's not really much I can do with only 0.1 unless I sell Tarkowski and Dewsbury Hall. Like, I could do that. Go Dewsbury Hall up to someone like better. I could punt on like Iwobi if I wanted to and go and buy James Hill in defence or something like that. Like, it's possible, but I'm not sure that's worth 2 transfers if the plan is to then wildcard. But this is, again, why I spoke about it in my video. We won't talk about this much and we'll get back to the questions. But in 32, this is why I'm not certain I'm going to wildcard in 32. This is what my team would look like with 5 free transfers. And I'm going to wildcard this. Raya, Van Dijk, Gabriel, Richards at home to Newcastle, Bruno and Burmo both at home to Leeds, Dewsbury Hall away at Brentford, Anderson at home to Villa, Ekitike, Thiago, Haaland. With five frees. The benefit of wildcard in 32, though, is the big double in 33 is to set the bench up for the double in 33. But it's possible, if I get here and things look good, I just use all of my transfers to get a good team for the double in 33, play the bench boost 33 without the wildcard, free at 34 and wildcard 35. That is also what I'm considering. Anyway, all paths lead back to the 2 transfers that I'm looking to make this week. It will leave me 0.1 in the bank, so it doesn't leave me much flexibility, but it does mean that I'm only using 2 of the 3 transfers. So for 29, I will have 2 transfers back again. Anyway, so yeah, that's the plan. Rice and Dorgu, it's been a fun ride. I mean, it hasn't really. I bought you after this return. In fact, Dorgu, it has been the opposite. of a fun ride. I bought you after this 17-pointer, so I bought you for Wolves at home. I played you at home to Wolves, I played you away at Leeds, and I played you away at Burnley, and you scored 2-1-5. I then benched you for City, and I benched you for Arsenal, where you scored 15 and 8, hoping that I could then play you for your nice run of fixtures afterwards, and then he got injured. What a roller coaster time I've had. So I've not had him for his 17, 15, and his 8. I had him for this, and then he got injured. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Dorgu, I would love to have said it's been a pleasure, but I would say it hasn't really. I would say it's been a pleasure, but it hasn't. It's almost, someone said it's really difficult to own Saar recently, and I said, you tell me about it. Try owning Saar at the beginning of the season. Just not owned players when they've been good. You have Sanchez in goal. Would I use a transfer on him? No, I'd probably just play Dubravka. Is Van Dijk a must buy? Probably not must buy, no. He's probably the best defender to buy. Does Dango or Schade get 4 more points than Anderson if you are chasing? If you're chasing, I'd rather have Dango than Anderson of Fulham, definitely. Yeah. Who do I sell Verts to? I'd probably just go Wilson or Dango. Someone just called me Uncle Harry. We're not going to answer that. Best Chalobah replacement: Van Dijk, Konate, Hill, Anderson, probably. Unless you want to punt on O'Reilly. Sell Pedro to Raul to get Van Dijk in for Keane. I don't mind João Pedro. Not João Pedro. I don't mind Jimenez. There is a chance Jimenez doesn't start 29 though. The chat's just lost it by the looks of it. Buy Hill or Van Dijk if I'm starting Bowen. I'd still rather buy Van Dijk. I wouldn't let that impact your decision because you're not just making it for 1 week, right? Because if you buy, let's say you buy Hill and you get the decision wrong, and then next week you still have Hill and not Van Dijk. Like, buy the one you want for the weeks you're going to buy them. It is absolutely okay to hold Timber. Yeah. Yeah. How long have we got? We've got 18 minutes to go. Right, let me check anything of any use on Twitter before I confirm these transfers. Nothing by the looks of it. Who should I replace Enzo with? I mean, Dango and Wilson, my top 2 again. I'm going Wilson, but I do like the appeal of Dango for people going there. João Pedro and Palmer to Salah and Thiago. No. I wouldn't be buying Salah. Again, Salah is a case in point of spending the money because it's there. Start Semenyo or Wilson, pick one. Probably Semenyo. Probably Semenyo. Enzo to Anderson for a -4. No. No. Buy Thiago, but benching headache this week. If there's someone you think that you can understandably bench, then it's fine. If not, then it's not worth it. How much does Thiago outscore the player that you're then benching as a result? Don't fancy Bruno captain or not locked in. I'm going to captain Haaland. It's not that I don't fancy captaining Bruno. I don't like either of them particularly this week. I don't think Bruno's been great. He's been better at home. Haaland has not been that great either, but I've got Mbeumo, right? So there is this other element of my thinking with the captaincy, which I don't know whether it makes sense, but it's one of these things that seems to make sense in my head, is that I mean, Haaland is much more highly owned, right? And he's going to be much more captain. That is a deciding factor for me. But I own Mbeumo and I don't own Semenyo. So the ownership on Manchester United midfielders, effectively, if you include Bruno captain and Mbeumo, is going to be 150%. The ownership of City, if you include Haaland Haaland and Semenyo, is going to be 230. So there is a world where playing Haaland captain means I've got 200% City versus 230 for the average, and I've got 200% United versus 150 for the average. Whereas if you do it the other way around, you're going massively in favour of United, not just with Bruno captain, but I'm also then backing Mbeumo against Semenyo as well. So I'm almost doubling down on United to be better than City if I do that. And I'm not sure I want to take that gamble in both spots. Is Vert back next week? We don't know that. Cash or Hill to start? I'd start Hill. Someone just said you make us better managers. I don't know if that is the case. I don't know if that's the case. Hopefully I just explain some of my thought processes. Everyone is aware by now that I'm a big one for minimizing risk, right? I'm buying Van Dijk and I'm buying Harry Wilson this week. Two of the biggest risks to my rank for the past 6 weeks, right? I'm finally buying them. But it's no surprise that I'm trying to reduce the risk that I've been up against for the past month and a half that's put me in the red arrow position that it has. So that's why I think like this, because I'm risk averse as a person, I'm risk averse as an FPL manager. There's some of you that will look at it as an opportunity and they'll go, okay, I've got no Semenyo, so I don't really want City to do that well, so I'm going to double down and I'm going to go with a Bruno captain instead of that. So there's different ways of thinking about it. It depends whether you want to go with the exciting side or you want to go with the safety side, which effectively is what that decision is. If you're trying to predict who scores most points, it's pretty close. Anderson and Timber. I'd play Timber over Anderson. Play Timber over Anderson. Rice, Rogers, João Pedro, bench one. João Pedro. I don't have an issue with benching any Chelsea players this week. As much as you might think Chelsea score, thinking we score more than one is pretty bullish. And predicting who's then that goal scorer is also pretty hard. Start Dewsbury Hall or Alderete? Probably Dewsbury Hall. Can Ekitike be captain? Absolutely. He's in my top 5. Yep. Is Rogers not a captain shout? He's just been very disappointing recently in terms of output, which means captaining him on top of that is quite difficult. He feels like a player I'd be happy to own, but yeah, not captain. Ian, thank you very much. With one free transfer, so they do Timber to Van Dijk or just save it. I would rather Van Dijk this week than Timber, but I do think it's quite close. Like, I'd prioritize every other transfer you could probably make over that transfer. But yes, if you've got nothing else to do, I would do Timber to Van Dijk. Like, I'd rather sell Rice. I'd rather sell João Pedro. I'd rather buy Thiago. I'd rather buy Wilson. I'd rather do a lot of things than doing Timber to Van Dijk. But if you've got everything else you're happy with this week, then yeah, Timber to Van Dijk. I just think people are overestimating Liverpool's defence and underestimating West Ham and Arsenal defence. Final 10 minutes to go before the deadline. Right, make transfers. Dorgu to Van Dijk, Rice to Wilson. It will leave me 0.1 in the bank. It will save me 1 transfer, so I'll have 2 again next week, where I will hopefully roll into game week 29 unless something happens over the weekend to change my thinking. The only player that I'm considering selling next week, and this probably is enough to put me off recommending Mbeumo, is Mbeumo. I actually think Mbeumo is the one from next week that I could see myself selling. Like, Newcastle away, Villa at home, Bournemouth away. It's like, it's good, but it's not like fantastic. Like, if Wirtz was back, could I do Mbeumo to Wirtz? It's all possible. It's all possible. So I don't think I'd be spending the money on Mbeumo now, I don't think. Right. Sorry, where were we? Dorgu to Van Dijk, Rice to Wilson. 2 free transfers, no hit taken. 2 of my 3 transfers. Change from 3-5-2 to 3-4-3 to get Thiago. Would have to bench one of Dango, Wilson, Rogers, Semenyo, Bruno. See, I wouldn't do that. Like, I don't think Thiago's so good that you should be using 2 transfers probably and benching one of them. So I just wouldn't do the transfers. Dango for Enzo or Virgil for Richards. You have Munoz. I mean, if you're starting Enzo and Munoz, I'd rather sell Enzo. But if Enzo's on your bench, then maybe Van Dijk's a bigger upgrade. Should I sell Vert if I play Dewsbury Hall? I just play Dewsbury Hall probably and hope Verts is back for Wolves. Thiago in for Watkins versus Wolves. Probably. I think there's a chance Watkins doesn't start both of the next 2 anyway. So I probably would just do it. Yeah. Right, let's do this. We've got 8 minutes to go to the deadline. There we go. Dewsbury Hall first sub, Tarkowski second sub, and Richards third sub. 9 minutes. That'll be my team. The only thing that I would move is the vice captain, but I'm going to keep it on Bruno, I think. I quite like Ekatike this week, but I don't trust him with the chances he's missed recently. Double Fulham, double United, double Liverpool, double Arsenal. It's quite a lot of double ups. This is probably, I mean, I was going to say it's a good thing I didn't buy Dango because then I would have had double Brentford, but then I wouldn't have had double Fulham. The good thing also about Wilson is it means I'm not like, it feels a bit more all, it doesn't really feel more all in. Anyway, I'm just chuntering to myself. For João Pedro to Ekatike after deadline before the price rises. For free, yeah, probably. It's just a risk that Ekatike gets injured. There's also a slight chance that Ekatike doesn't start Wolves because of the quick turnaround, but I can't see how he doesn't if Verts is out. Why didn't I wildcard? I should have wildcarded. In hindsight, potentially a Game Week 24 wildcard would have been better, but I don't even think I would have been that much better off. I wouldn't have owned Palmer. I would have owned João Pedro. I would have owned Enzo, and I would have owned Chelsea defence. Those would have been the big differences. I don't know on a 24 wildcard if I would have owned Van Dijk. I need to look back at what a 24 wildcard. So I would have been slightly better off, but I've owned Mbermo over Enzo, and Mbermo's smashed Enzo. Yeah, I don't know how much better off I would have been with a 24 wildcard. Maybe like 20 points, 10, 20 points. But that's probably not worth it now. City are 70%. I wouldn't have had Van Dijk. Like, I don't think a 24 wildcard had Van Dijk on it. So, and I don't think it had O'Reilly on either. So what did I really do differently on a 24 wildcard that I would have had that much more? It's probably only João Pedro. So then it's probably not worth it. So it probably is a good thing I didn't do it, even though I've had red arrows. Start Rogers or Tavernier. Probably Rogers, just because Tavernier's not nailed to start. Would I rather do Rice to Dango or Pedro to Thiago? I'd rather do Pedro to Thiago. Yeah, my team's locked in. Haaland, cap, Bruno Vice, 2 transfers made, Van Dijk in and Wilson in. What's a goalkeeper you would buy? Kelleher, Petrovic, Alisson, Darlow, Dubravka. Off the top of my head, -4 to get Thiago or cover with Dango. I mean, it depends what the moves are. If it's a big upgrade that helps your team over the next couple of weeks, then I don't mind the hits. Again, hits are difficult to answer. In any specific week, do I think a -4 is particularly worth it? Probably not. It's probably hardly going to pay off. But is it going to pay off between now and 32? Potentially. So think about it. Does it benefit your team? Do you think the -4 gets you more points between now and when you look to sell that player again? Then maybe. So if that's a Game Week 32 wildcard, does the hit pay off over the next 4 weeks? Maybe. Does the hit help you out in the blank in Game Week 31? Like if you're selling players who blank, does that make it more beneficial? Then yeah. Because like if you have to take a hit, So here's an example. I'd be pretty certain that Timber to Van Dijk is not worth a hit, right? I'm pretty confident that it's not. But if you have to take a hit in 31 regardless to get 11 players out, then effectively the hit is free because you're going to have to take a hit anyway. So then you don't need to worry about if it's worth a hit now. You're just bringing a transfer forward that you're going to have to take a hit for anyway. But if you don't have to take a hit to get a full team out in 31, then yes, the hit is worthwhile, if that makes any sense. Start Ryan or Anderson. Ryan. Hill to Van Dijk. I wouldn't sell Hill to anyone. I'd sell one of your other defenders. Thoughts on Chaël to O'Reilly? I probably wouldn't do that. Chaël did really well against Everton earlier on. Bench Anderson or Timber. I'd play Timber over Anderson. And I'd play Verbruggen over Dubravka. Verts to Szoboszlai and Enzo to Dango. No Van Dijk transfer. Yeah, or you could do Verts to Dango, bench Enzo to do Enzo to Szoboszlai next week and do Van Dijk in, Jacob, potentially. I don't know what your team looks like. Yeah, like I would sell João Pedro to Thiago, probably, yeah. But I do think that from next week, the Chelsea fixtures aren't as bad. Rodgers, Wilson, or Rodgers, bench one. Well, I'd bench Rodgers probably. You can't afford Van Dijk, who to buy? Konate or James Hill probably. Start Rice or do a -4 to Dango. Just start Rice. Rice to Dango is not worth a hit, which effectively is what you're doing. How essential is Thiago this week? Planning on bringing him in next week. Yeah, again, if you can do it for free next week, I probably would just wait. Fiona, Tavernier or Rice to bench? I probably would play Rice, just because the uncertainty on Tavernier's minutes. Probably would just about play Rice. Buy Chaël instead of Hill. It depends, because Chaël's good. Chaël, if I had to buy a defender for 29 and 31, or 28 and 31, I'd buy Malik Chaël. But Hill is slightly better in the 2 game weeks in the middle. Probably would just buy Hill, to be honest, and save the money. Would I keep or sell Foden? I'd sell Foden. Yeah. Is it okay to take a -4 to upgrade your third forward to Thiago? You're from Guy to Thiago? Yes, especially if it means you can bench someone you don't want to play this week. Bench Dewsbury Hall or Andersen? I'd play Andersen over Dewsbury Hall, I think. Buy Thiago or Ekitike? I'd buy Thiago. My biggest rank threats this week, probably Dango Ouattara and Semenyo and O'Reilly. So City. I also don't own O'Reilly, so there's part of me wanting to captain Haaland again. Szoboszlai versus Rice, long-term pick. I mean, probably Rice, but Rice blanks in 31, so Szoboszlai probably. How is O'Reilly not in the dream team? He should be. Leeds have been good at home though, but yeah, if I was on free hit, I'd still have O'Reilly just because his attacking threat is so good. Rice or Dewsbury Hall? Definitely I'd play Rice. People are underestimating Arsenal this week. I would not be surprised if Timber and Rice both return. Like, it wouldn't be a surprise if Timber keeps clean sheet and Rice gets DEFCON and an assist. It's very possible. So, start Timber or Ndiaye. I'd probably play Timber over Ndiaye. Dallo or Timber to start. Probably Timber. Timber or Mane. I'd play Timber. Start Declan Rice or Evan Nilsson. I mean, Evan Nilsson can't finish, so probably Rice. Rice to Dango or Strand Larsen to Thiago or Roll. Rice to Dango or Strand Larsen to Thiago. Strand Larsen to Thiago, definitely. What do I think of Semenyo Cap? I don't love it as much as other players. He wasn't great last game. Start Mark Gay or Creepy Jr. -4 for Konate to Munoz. No. Pedro over Tavernier. No. Tavernier over Pedro. Rice or Wilson. Start Van Heck or Hill. Timber to O'Reilly. No. Right. That is going to be your final minute warning. We're into the final minutes before the game week 28 deadline. Please go and check your team. Lock it in. Set it up. Set your captains. Confirm your transfers. This is my team. 2 transfers confirmed. Van Dijk in for Dorgu. Wilson in for Declan Rice. 2 transfers made, 1 transfer saved, so I'll have 2 transfers in game week 29. Haaland captain, Bruno vice captain. That is my team. That is the deadline. That is game week 28. Boom. That is all for the questions in the chat. Go and check your teams. Lock it in. Don't miss the deadline. That is game week 28 in the books. Game week 28. If you are heading off, thank you all very much for joining. I've hardly plugged likes and subscribes at all during the stream, to the point where we haven't even hit 1,000. If you could like the stream and subscribe as a thank you for not plugging it too much. Tell me crazy, but my red arrows started to change. My red arrows changed to red when I bought Ektika and Thiago. Absolutely, you're not wrong. Not because they were bad picks, or they haven't scored any goals. Is it true you're publishing a book? It's not. Who's made up that rumor? That's a crazy one. Yeah, it's not. So I did Rice plus Dorgu out. Wilson plus Van Dijk in. Haaland cap. Good luck, everyone. Have a nice. Oh, my stomach is rumbling. I am hungry. Right. We'll finish up quickly with Fantasy Challenge. Right. I should publish a book. What would you like to see me publish a book on? I'm going to have to... Oh, no, I'm not going to have to log in. Right. Let's quickly do this before I've got to dip. So it's double Wolves, double Villa. I've gone with... I'm actually going to change this, I think. Because for anyone who knows how I play this game, so I'm going to go Dango. Course. Mane. Going to go... Actually, Sarr can stay in. Defender is going to be O'Reilly. Basically, I just pick a team of all my rank threats. So if I have a bad game week, then they do well. I'm going to put Bruno in here because I could have captained him. So we're going to go with that. Roger's captain because you get double ideas for Wolves Villa. Anyway, I am going to wrap it up. It's Friday evening. As you can tell, I'm quite tired and I'm also very hungry as well. Thank you all very much for joining. Good luck this week. We'll be back with videos, of course. Don't forget, it's a Tuesday deadline for Game Week 29, so things will move thick and fast next couple of days. Once we get to Sunday, once we get the game week out of the way, we'll start thinking about Game Week 29, which is on Tuesday. Thank you all very much for joining. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a very nice evening. Have a very nice weekend, and I will catch you all very soon.